Hello wrestling fans. ProWrestleMachine is back with another conversion. August 7, 1995 Wrestling Observer Newsletter. Ricky Morton fired from two companies, Jarrett and Roadie having WWE problems, things apparently not looking good for Nitro debut and more. By Observer staff. Wrestling Observer Newsletter, P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California 950091228. August 7, 1995. Ricky Morton, who along with Jim Cornette was the foundation of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling promotion and involved in the hottest feud in a long time in the United States Wrestling Association, was fired from both groups shortly after the WWF In Your House 2 pay-per-view show stemming from problems between his longtime girlfriend, Andrea Calloway, and Tracy Smothers' fiancée, Angela Lambert. The problems resulted in Calloway, who was a former roommate of Lambert and introduced Lambert to Smothers originally, filing aggravated assault charges against Smothers and Lambert. The situation apparently began after an SMW house show on July 8 in Johnson City. The four went to a nightclub together in Kingsport, Tennessee, where apparently Morton and Calloway got into an argument which was loud enough to where Lambert suggested they take the argument outside. As the story goes, Calloway and Morton's argument got louder and Calloway allegedly started hitting Morton, with Morton not hitting back and just covering up. Smothers then allegedly pulled Calloway off Morton and she started on Smothers, which led to Lambert fighting with Calloway before they calmed down and left together to go to Lambert's parents' house. An argument broke out again in the car as they reached Lambert's parents' driveway, which resulted in Lambert, in the front seat, jumping into the back seat where Calloway was and giving her a serious enough beating that resulted in black eyes. Calloway then swore out an aggravated assault charge claiming that Smothers, 32, and Lambert, 28, had both beaten her up, saying, "We were in Mr. Smothers' vehicle, my boyfriend and I started arguing. As we stopped, Tracy and Angela turned around and started hitting me in the face and head. I was in the back seat and Angela picked up a high-heel shoe and hit me in the and nose, causing severe bruising, bleeding and pain. Angela then got out of the car, opened the back door and grabbed me by the hair, pulling me out of the car. I had one leg out on the ground and she slammed the door on my leg. Tracy and Angela said they would have me killed. Cornette said that when he talked to Morton and Smothers originally about the incident, both said the two girls had gotten into a fight but that Smothers at no point is Calloway. A few days later Cornette said that he was on the phone with Morton and Calloway and Morton said that he never saw Smothers hit Calloway. Over the next few weeks, several more incidents took place. Morton no-showed SMW promos at one point. At another point a story went around that Calloway was going to sue Lambert, whose family has some money. Calloway then swore out the arrest warrants against both in two different counties. Both Smothers and Lambert posted bond in one country for the assault charge. At the July 15 show in Knoxville, Smothers and Morton got into an argument about the incident which resulted in a pull-apart. Calloway, who had been working the USWA circuit as the manager of the Rock and Roll Express, had stopped appearing at the USWA shows since Smothers was working the same shows. Calloway had also generally appeared at most SMW house shows, with Morton handling the gimmick table. Morton had attempted numerous times to get his girlfriend a job working as a performer with SMW but Cornette wanted no part of it, and after the first set of arrest warrants had been sworn out, Cornette didn't want Calloway at the shows because of potential problems with Smothers. At 3 a.m. on the evening of July 21, police came to Lambert's house and arrested her as Calloway had sworn out the second charge. They were looking to arrest Smothers as well, but Smothers was at an SMW spot show that night and she let them know he would be wrestling the next night in Morristown, Tennessee and would turn himself in after the show. Since nobody had been able to contact Smothers before the Morristown show, when Cornette received word that Smothers was going to have to turn himself in after the show, he told Morton it would be for the best for him to skip Morristown. Morton had already no-showed television that morning in Memphis where Smothers was appearing and Morton was scheduled to be part of a television angle leading to the Monday night house show. After the In Your House 2 pay-per-view show in Nashville, Cornette, Randy Hales, USWA booker and general manager, and Morton were on a three-way with him imploring Morton to get Calloway to drop the charges, particularly since Smothers had recently won a lengthy custody battle for his son and it would open a major can of worms for Smothers if he and his soon-to-be wife were facing charges of beating up a woman. Cornette and Hales agreed to split the court costs of dropping all the charges and paying any medical bills of Calloway, assuring Calloway that Lambert would apologize to her. Calloway refused to drop the charges and both Cornette and Hales decided to not use Morton at least for the present, figuring he and Smothers couldn't be in the same dressing room and that Smothers was an innocent victim in all this, and that while Morton was something of a victim, ultimately they believed he had more control of the situation regarding Calloway and the charges, and thus both circuits fired Morton despite him being in key programs in each place. There was word at least at one point that Calloway was willing to drop the charges against Smothers but not Lambert, and that Morton said he'd try to smooth everything over. The story that Smothers had been arrested for assaulting a woman made the local radio, television and newspapers news in the Tri-Cities region. Later in the week, Morton told Cornette that they had tried to drop the charges, but the police said since they were felonious charges, they wouldn't be able to drop them. Cornette and Morton talked again on Thursday night, with Cornette imploring Morton that if they could take care of everything, they would rehire him. However, on Saturday, Morton and Calloway appeared doing a promo for promoter Terry, no relation to Buddy, Landell, who was promoting an indie show on August 19th at Chilhowie Park in Knoxville. Cornette had told everyone on his crew that anyone who worked that show, which includes former Knoxville area stars Ron Garvin and Bob Orton, would never work for SMW again. Morton's response was that he had to work because he didn't have a job, and Cornette felt it put him in a bad position since he had told everyone in his crew that he'd never use anyone who worked the Landell show. Because the incident made so much press in the Johnson City area, Cornette said that Morton's departure would be handled as close to the truth as possible on upcoming SMW television. Morton, 38, was one of the most popular wrestlers and best workers of the 1980s with longtime partner Robert Gibson. The two were the top drawing tag team during the most successful business period for both Bill Watts Mid-South Wrestling in 1984-85 and Jim Crockett Promotions 1985-87. His career as a major performer appeared to be over, as it was believed he was too old to get over playing a role designed for someone in his early 20s. However, upon the formation of SMW and the feud with the Heavenly Bodies, his career got a second lease on life. Morton and Gibson appeared to be happy enough being big fish in a small pond that on several occasions they turned down offers from WCW to remain with SMW. Cornette estimated that between the two territories and gimmick sales that Morton would have been earning about $1,000 per week in the jobs he no longer has. The incident took place just as both territories seemed to be on major business upswings. USWA on the July 24th show, which Morton and Gibson and Smothers were scheduled to headline in a six-man tag against PG-13 and Tommy Rich as the Rock and Roll Express versus PG-13, had amidst all the potential problems been turned into a USWA versus SMW feud, giving them more latitude with ideas, drew 2,400 fans and $14,000. To show this wasn't a fluke and it is the hottest feud in the territory in years, they followed it up on July 31st with a crowd estimated in excess of 2,500 for a USWA versus SMW 8-man street fight. SMW, which has probably its strongest lineup in regard to big-name talent in its history on August 4th in Knoxville, already had an unheard of $10,000 advance for the show as of 3 p.m. on July 28th, which was more than 25% ahead of the pace set by last summer's company record Night of the Legend show, which drew 5,000 fans and $40,000. At least for now, the feud over the SMW tag titles, which was going to be Smothers and Dirty White Boy champs versus Rock and Roll Express, it'll be changed, including at the Knoxville Major Show, to Smothers and White Boy defending against the unannounced substitutes of the Heavenly Bodies, who apparently are going to take over the program. Robert Gibson will be retained by both SMW and USWA, although it's no secret that his value as a performer diminishes greatly without Morton. As the week went on, the situation regarding the WWF status of Jeff Jarrett and the Roadie, Brian James, has continued to develop. Jarrett and Roadie walked out of the WWF in the middle of the In Your House 2 pay-per-view show on July 23rd in Nashville, apparently quitting the company because both believed the split between the two of them that was planned to take place on the show was too early in the storyline. The two were scheduled to do an angle after the match with Shawn Michaels, which would lead to a singles match between the two of them at the SummerSlam pay-per-view show. However, they left the building without doing the turn. Vince McMahon immediately changed the plan and had an interview done a few minutes later with Doak Hendricks, Michaels Zeitz, by himself, saying he had seen the two get into a fight and that he couldn't believe what the two were saying to each other. On the live Monday Night Raw show the next day, that angle was furthered with McMahon saying that Hendricks had heard in the argument that Jarrett was lip-syncing the song With My Baby Tonight the previous night and it was really Roadie who was singing, which was the case. Although there were hints thrown in that the two may have left, and even stronger hints by the weekend's syndicated shows, they for the most part were progressing with the storyline rather than dropping it as is usual wrestling custom. Jeff's father Jerry Jarrett did an interview in Pro Wrestling Torch saying that Jeff believed his character was being burned out too quickly and that Jeff would be joining him in a non-wrestling related family business. Jeff was unhappy with the direction of his character in WWF, Jerry Jarrett said in the interview. His departure was an accumulation of many things. He didn't feel his character was being utilized where he would have longevity. Then compounded that with the burn factor that there are now 24 pay-per-views between WWF and WCW. Your candle starts burning the second you are exposed in either of the two national companies. Everybody has a certain shelf life, He is out of the wrestling business as far as I'm concerned. And I am delighted. I hope he sits out a year. With 24 pay-per-views per year, where are these promotions going to hatch wrestlers to fill the cards? This is not a power play. Jeff had talked to Vince McMahon about his dissatisfaction with his character development and push for the last 6 months. Now Vince is telling people he didn't know Jeff was upset. As someone who has sat in the promoter's chair, I would tell you to do what the office wants you to do or get out of the kitchen. Jeff expressed his views, didn't get a response, and then walked. As the week went on, Jeff Jarrett and WWF officials were still in the talking stage, and WWF officials were trying to patch up the problems. While in most cases, it would be an unforgivable sin to walk out in the middle of a show without executing the plans for the show, Titan apparently thinks enough of Jarrett as a performer and up until that point had been a model employee, not to mention the fact the company is desperately thin on the heel side and lacks depth when it comes to quality performers. The belief is that Roadie walked out based on loyalty to Jarrett, and that if Jarrett were to return, Roadie would as well, and it isn't out of the realm of possibility that the original storyline of them splitting up and starting to feud at the end of this month would be postponed. Despite reports elsewhere to the contrary, Jarrett has several months remaining on his contract with Titan, which means Titan could keep him from working elsewhere. It is doubtful Titan would exercise that option when it comes to if Jarrett wants to work USWA, but would almost certainly keep him from going to WCW. Roadie, who has more than 1 year remaining on his contract, is booked as Brian Armstrong with SMW starting this coming week. The basic problem appeared to have been that Jeff, and people have pointed the finger at his father, who works as a consultant for WCW after having a short and basically unsuccessful tenure working with WWF, felt that the combination of dropping the title and being exposed as a fraud as a singer, both in his hometown, would do too much damage to him in one night. It appears it was similar to the philosophy Bruiser Brody used to have, in that he'd work for a promotion as they were building him up, but in the old territorial system, once they reached the top, it was time for a slow decline, and Brody used to leave often the night the slow decline was supposed to begin after not doing the first key job. In addition, there was a lot of concern in the weeks leading up to the show that they were playing out the Jarrett-Roadie split too quickly, which is a valid argument, and it could have been successfully stretched out for several months. While those at Titan have admitted Jarrett had voiced dissatisfaction, they didn't perceive it to be nearly as serious of a problem as it turned out to be, pointing to the fact that Jarrett and Roadie had gone through a dry run of their breakup before the show and neither said a word about not wanting to do it. As of the weekend's television, there was no direct word about Jarrett and Roadie being gone, although by the Sunday Action Zone show it was acknowledged that the two walked out of the building, although in the wrestling storyline it was due to their split and they left apart from each other, and that as of the weekend neither had been heard from since, and they didn't even know if they'd be back with the WWF. WWF officials are hopeful that Jarrett and Roadie will return this week, which is one reason the SummerSlam lineup hasn't been finalized. In addition, there is the matter of trying to recoup the money already spent on the video by selling the song, which is going to be quite a bit harder to promote when neither the singer nor the Milli Vanilli version of the singer isn't around to promote it. World Championship Wrestling's efforts to bring in quality workers to boost the proposed Monday night television show seem to be evaporating like water in a heat wave. Two of the original names proposed to come in, Al Snow and Eddie Guerrero, appear to have fallen through. Snow made a verbal agreement on July 28 with the WWF and is expected to sign a contract sometime this week. We were incorrect a few weeks back stating WCW had made Snow a better financial offer, but WWF had done a better job of recruiting. In fact, Snow, who did a tryout match with WCW, was never offered a firm deal by WCW despite being assured that he would be, and being told to hold off signing with WWF until comparing the deals by Eric Bischoff. However, Bischoff and WCW never got back to Snow after his trip to Atlanta, feeling that Snow, who was backstage at the WWF Monday Night Raw taping on July 24 in Louisville, had already made up his mind to go with WWF, and the company line was that Snow wanted too much money. WWF did a far superior job of recruiting, picking him up in a limo, and came off far more enthusiastic about having him join their company as opposed to WCW, which was more aloof in regard to his visit. Neither group offered Snow any kind of specific role. When WCW failed to get back to Snow by July 28, he called up J.J. Dillon and agreed to their offer. Guerrero, who WCW thought was in the bag last week, also fell through because WCW didn't offer any kind of a guaranteed contract. Guerrero, who based on his recent television work is probably the best pure worker in the United States right now, got back the ECW TV title on July 28 in Middletown, New York from Dean Malenko, and looks to remain with ECW. WCW had wanted Snow, Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Sabu, and possibly Dean Malenko to up the work rate of their new show, which goes head-to-head with Monday Night Raw starting on September 4. At this point, they've accomplished getting none of the above, because it appears the company won't be offering any newcomers contracts and in fact is constantly looking for ways to cut the payroll. There has been concern expressed by several of the names above that WCW has been unable to get anyone over. The Benoit's treatment when he was in WCW, along with the treatment of Brian Pillman and Steve Austin, who have been with the company for years and are two of the 3 or 4 best workers in the company, seemingly have had their careers go nowhere. We've had more in the way of updates into the WWF's financial situation. While rumors are flying, to the point that many are reporting almost the imminent demise of the company, for reasons stated last week: no attempts to sell shares in the company, no movement of the headquarters from Titan Towers, it seems the alarm is premature, although it is clear the financial situation is serious enough that there have been numerous layoffs. The actual layoff figure is about 25 from the front office, which is slightly lower than what has been reported elsewhere, with the key figures being Steve Planamoneta, Skip Desjardins, and Rex Lardner. About 10 December were from Titan Towers, with the other half being on the television production side. Other personalities known to television viewers who weren't major parts of the actual decision-making front office, such as Jack Tunney, Stephanie Wyand, road agent Tony Garia, and possibly Lord Al Hayes, were also let go. The company is clearly in a position of having to downsize because revenues are nothing compared to what they were in the company's heyday. In the case of Garia, his being let go was largely based on Titan hiring Mike Rotunda IRS as a new road agent and designated substitute in the case of no-shows on road shows, since he's basically retiring as an active performer. Of the other names listed here last week, Sennefa, Lou Albano and Duke Dries were all dropped, as were Mantor, Heavenly Bodies and Techno Team 2000. Both Doink and Dink and King Kong Bundy are being phased down, but will probably get some bookings on high school B shows and charity shows because they have name value in the Northeast, but neither will be pushed hard on television other than occasionally being put on TV once in a while or be in any significant role. Shinja Akiyosato was dropped with his last appearance at the July 24th Raw show getting pile-driven by Bret Hart, and he started on July 28th as a manager for War in Japan. Hakushi, who was thought to be leaving since Shinja was his interpreter, wowed everyone with his match with Bret Hart and is sticking around, which was his own decision as the company had never decided to let him go, but there was the thought he was going to decide to leave. The Bodies are expected to work both SMW and USWA in a headline role, and there is talk that Techno Team may get work in USWA as well, although the latter isn't as much of a definite. Snow Dean Douglas, Troy Martin aka Shane Douglas, and Goldust, Dustin Runnels aka Dustin Rhodes, will be added to the roster, the latter two probably on the heel side, Douglas definitely, since that side is so weak when it comes to singles headliners. The first of what looks to be many people trying to become legitimate competition to the Ultimate Fighting Championship is a group called World Combat Championships, WCC, with its first pay-per-view show on October 7th from the Winston-Salem Memorial Coliseum. As mentioned here previously, the first WCC tournament includes 3 pro wrestlers: Dick Leon Frey, Rings, Bart Vale, PWFG, and Steve Nelson, UWFI. The show, produced by Christopher Peters, son of movie producer John Peters, and his Marcus/Peters organization out of Santa Monica, California, along with Showtime Event Television, has a few differences from the UFC, which, after dominating the July pay-per-view competition, appears to have surpassed WWF and WCW as the #1 regularly scheduled, as opposed to an individual event such as a major boxing match, pay-per-view franchise. According to its press release, WCC is offering a total of $294,000 in prize money, a substantial increase from the approximately $150,000 offered at the past 2 UFC shows, although the higher prize money doesn't seem to have resulted in as strong a field of competitors as UFC shows have drawn. In addition, there are noticeable rule differences from UFC. The tournament, fought in a battlefield similar to the UFC octagon but different enough to avoid potential legal problems, UFC has trademarked the octagon fighting field, will be divided into 2 different 4-man tournaments with each having different rules. There will be a strikers tournament, in which wrestling submissions maneuvers are banned to create a situation with more punches and perhaps even kicks. If the match goes to the ground, the fighters will be put back on their feet after 3 minutes on the ground. Victory can only be gained by tapping out or knockout. The striking tournament will feature Frey, from the Netherlands, a Dolph Lundgren-looking bodybuilder type who has the right marketable look and is a kickboxer who has done pro wrestling but is admittedly limited when it comes to actual wrestling ability. Is the guy being pushed the heaviest in the press releases as the favorite, including a worked credential that he won $100,000 in a freestyle fighting tournament in Japan. Sean McCulley, Muay Thai kickboxing. James Waring, former IBF World Cruiserweight Boxing Champion who had a famous UWFI match with Billy Scott several years ago. And Brent DeSantis, kickboxing. In the Grapplers tournament, which will allow punching but be more in line with the UFC style almost anything goes style, submissions are legal and the grapplers will be put back on their feet after 10-minute intervals. The Grapplers tournament will feature Ben Spikers, Judo, Mike Bidonyo, Kapu Kuyalua, Enzo Gracie, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Vale. The press skit doesn't say what relation Gracie is to Hoist but says he's putting the family's 60-plus year record on the line. In a Gracie genealogy list I was given, there is no Enzo Gracie listed as being the son of either Elio or Carlos Gracie, the two brothers who both claim to be the originators of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, or Carlos, son Carlson's family. Nelson is an alternate in the Grapplers division. Matches in both tournaments will be fought with no rounds and a 22-minute time limit. The winner of each division will then have a free fight championship match fought under Grappler division rules. Results: July 16th, Mexicali, Norte, California, AAA 7000, Mascara Sagrada and Octagonchito and Super Muñequito B Espectritos I and 2 and Jurito Estrada, Angel Blanco Jr. and Picudo and Heavy Metal B Aguila de Acero and Torero and Super Muñeco, Rey Mysterio Jr. and Octagon and El Hijo del Santo B Pentagon and Psicosis and Heavy Metal. IWC middleweight title, Rey Mysterio B Fuerza Guerrera to win title, Cien Caras and Mascara Año 2000 and Universo 2000 B Conan and Mascara Sagrada and Pero Aguayo. July 22nd, Rockeford, Alberta, Stampede Wrestling 250, Maurice Nipus B Dragos Yavago, Jason Anderson B Jason Helton, Great Gama B Ken Johnson, Keith Hart B Biff Wellington, Bruce Hart B Cuban Assassin Corps. July 22nd, Salisbury Beach, Massachusetts, New England Pro Wrestling 125, Big City Mike B Sergeant Muldoon DQ, El Loco and Freight Train Fulton B Christos Arion and Super Stud, Eclipse B Akmir Mohammed, Knuckles Nelson B Dragonfly, Punisher B Mike Lawler, Fulton and Loco B and Turns DQ, El Mascarado D Joel Davis, Johnny Royal B Rip Morrison. July 22nd, Hudson, New Hampshire, Ringside Wrestling 122, Chris Falcon B Chris Hammer, Robbie Ellis B Slammy the Clown, Johnny Royal B Rip Morrison, Bruiser Costa B Butcher Hughes DQ, Chief Fox B Bob Evans, Gary Gold B Captain USA, Hughes. July 23rd, Rockeford, Alberta, Stampede Wrestling 250, Teddy and Matthew Annis B Harry Smith and TJ Wilson, Ken Johnson D Biff Wellington, Ross Hart B Jason Helton, Jason Anderson B Maurice Nipus, Bruce and Keith Hart B Great Gama and Cuban Assassin, Nipus 1 Battle Royal. July 23rd, Portsmouth, Ohio, Wrestling Group International 225, Crazy Cannibal B Red Ranger Damien, Not Original As If, B Ted Allen Original, Brian Taylor B Mike MacGyver Tower of Doom, Wasn't That a Cage Jim Crockett Used and Not a Person? B Andy Runyon, Max Hurley and Big Kahuna and Bustus Henry B Chris Canyon and Butch the Brawler and Dugan the Lumberjack, Sean Casey B Randy Rogers, Rogers 1 Battle Royal. July 24th, Tokyo Budokan Hall. Correct results, some mistakes last week. All Japan, 16,300 sellout, Yoshinari Ogawa and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Tamon Honda and Raikaku Izumida beat Jun Akiyama and Takawa Mori and Satoru Asako and Kentaro Shiga 1640, Dan Crawford and Doug Furness be Wrecking Crew 1045, Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta and Mitsuo Momoto be Mighty Inoue and Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi 1515, Stan Hansen and Johnny Smith be Chris and Mark Youngblood, Johnny Ace B the Patriot 1920, Ken Kobashi D Akira Tau 30 minutes. Triple Crown Nitsuharu Misawa B Toshiaki Kawada 2416. July 24th, Louisville, WWF Monday Night Raw taping, 4,181. Non-squash results, strap match, Bam Bam Bigelow B Tatanka, WWF Tag Title, Razor Ramon and Sabio Vega B Owen Hart and Yokozuna Core, WWF Tag Title, Hart and Yokozuna B Ramon and Vega, Shawn Michaels B Jimmy Del Rey, Bret Hart B Hakushi, Diesel B Mo, Casket Match, Undertaker B Kama, Bret Hart and Michaels B Blue Brothers, Cage Match for WWF Title, Diesel B Sid. July 24th, Memphis, USWA, 2,400, Axel Rutten B Gorgeous George 3, Brandon Baxter B Miss Texas, Pat Tanaka D Stephen Dunn, Mark Curtis B Bill Rush, Doug Gilbert B Buddy Landell, Lex Luger and Davey Boy Smith B Billy Jack Haynes and Brian Lee DQ, Texas Death Match, Robert Gibson and Tracy Smothers and Landell B PG-13 and Tommy Rich. July 25th, Evansville, Indiana, WWF Superstars taping, 5,000, non-squash results, WWF Tag Title, Lex Luger and Davey Boy Smith B Owen Hart and Yokozuna DQ 2.5 stars, Fada B Rad Radford 2 stars, Razor Ramon and Savio Vega and 1 to 2-3 Kid B Blue Brothers and Uncle Zeb 2 1/4 stars. Shawn Michaels B Skip 2 stars, Hakushi B Aldo Montoya 2.5 stars, King Mabel B Razor Ramon 1 star, Skip D Barry Horowitz 2 3/4 stars, Elimination Match, Shawn Michaels and Diesel and Undertaker B Sid and Kama and Tatanka 2 stars, Cage Match, Bret Hart B Hakushi 2.5 stars. July 25th Dalton, Georgia WCW Pro Tapings, 1000 non-squash results, Bubba Rogers B Dave Sullivan, Brian Pillman B Alex Wright 3 1/2 stars, Mark Starr B Tim Horner, Ric Flair and Arnold Anderson B Scott and Steve Armstrong 3 1/2 stars, Pillman B Steve Armstrong, Anderson B Horner, Pillman B Wright 3 stars, Rogers B Duggan, Nasty Boys B Steve Regal and Bobby Eaton 2 stars, U.S. title, Sting B Meng DQ 1 1/2 star. July 25th Yokohama, Heisei Ishgun 4000, Black Cat B Yuji Nagata, Gran Hamada B El Samurai, Shinjiro Otani B Sabu, Koji Kanemoto B Wild Pegasus, Akitoshi Saito and Kunyaki Kobayashi B Isamu Teranishi and Animal Hamaguchi, Masachono B Yoshiaki Yatsu, Michiyoshi Ohara B Hiroyoshi Tenzan, Shiro Koshinaka and Kengo Kimura B Riki Chashu and Kensuke Sasaki, Kazuo Yamazaki B Tatsutoshi Goto. July 25th Louisville, USWA, Gorgeous George 3 B Corey Williams, Brandon Baxter B Miss Texas, Axel Rotten D Scott Studd, Tracy Smothers B Pat Tanaka DQ, Brian Lee B Bill Dundee DQ USWA title, Billy Jack Haynes B Stephen Dunn Unified title, Jerry Lawler B Buddy Landell DQ, Texas Death Match Robert Gibson and Tracy Smothers B PG-13. July 25th Koga, FMW 1200, Hider B Tetsuhiro Kuroda Megumi Kudo D Mayumi Shimizu, Horace Boulder B Mach Hayato Kudo and Combat Toyota B Bad Nurse Nakamura and Shark Tsuchiya, Riki Fuji and Hisakatsu Oya B Mitsuhiro Matsunaga and Super Leather, Hayabusa and Koji Nakagawa B Masato Tanaka and Katsutoshi Niyama. July 25th Gunma All Japan Women, Nobu Indo B Misae Watanabe, Kumiko Maekawa and Yumi Fukawa B Chaparada Asari and Yukishina, Tomoko Watanabe B Atsuko Mita, Asia Kong and Mima Shimoda B Mariko Yoshida and Kaoru Ito, Toshio Yamada B Ri Tamada, Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue and Yumiko Hata B Reggie Bennett and Saki Hasegawa and Manami Toyota. July 25th Tokyo Korakuen Hall, Big Japan Pro Wrestling, 2100 Sellout, Exhibition, Tiger Mask D Satoru Sayama, Tony Norris B Ishiro Yaguchi, Kendo Nagasaki and Bruiser Okamoto B Tarzan Goto and Mr. Ganasuke 2139. July 25th Vienna, Austria, CWA, Dave Finley B Joe Lee, Franz Schumann B Tony St. Clair, Bull Rope Match, Victor Kruger B John Hawk, Hot Rod Price B Dan Collins DQ. July 26th St. Louis, WWF Challenge Taping, 10,500, Non-Squash Results, WWF Tag Title, Lex Luger and Davey Boy Smith B Owen Hart and Yokozuna DQ 2 stars, Fantasio, Del Spellbinder Wilkes, B Rad Radford 1 1/2 star, Strap Match, Bam Bam Bigelow B Tatanka 1 1/2 star, Casket Match, Undertaker B Kama 1 1/2 star, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels B Hakushi and Jerry Lawler 2 3/4 stars, Cage Match for WWF title, Diesel B Yokozuna 2 stars. July 26th Atlanta Center Stage, WCW Saturday Night Taping, 785 sellout / all freebies, non-squash results Renegade B Max Muscle, Ric Flair B Alex Wright, Marcus Bagwell and Wright B Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck DQ. July 26th Hiratsuka, Heisei Ishgun, 1500 Yuji Nagata B Tatsuhito Takaiwa, Akitoshi Saito B Isamu Teranishi, Wild Pegasus, and Gran Hamada B Sabu and Black Cat, Yoshiaki Yatsubi Kunyaki Kobayashi, Masachono and Hiroyoshi Tenzan B Michiyoshi Ohara and Kengo Kimura, Shiro Koshinaka and Tatsutoshi Goto B Riki Chashu and Masa Saito. July 26 Higashiyama, Michinoku Pro 196, Grand Naniwa B Masato Yakashiji Terry Boy and Shiryubi Yamada and Naohiro Hoshikawa Yone Jinjin NC Wellington Wilkins Jr., Super Delphin and Takamichi Noku B Hanzo Nakajima and Great Sasuke. July 26 Tot All Japan Women 1750, prelim results unavailable, Reggie Bennett B Toshio Yamada, Mariko Yoshida B Yumiko Hata, Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue B Asia Kong and Ri Tamada. July 27 Nagariyama FMW 400, Hideki Hasaka B Mach Hayato Megumi Kudo and Combat Toyota B Miwa Sato and Bad Nurse Nakamura, Masato Tanaka NC Tetsuhiro Kuroda, Mr. Pogo B. Haido, Street Fight, The Gladiator B. Horace Boulder, Wing Kanemura and Mitsuhiro Matsunaga and Super Leather B. Hayabusa and Katsutoshi Niyama and Koji Nakagawa. July 27, Yahaba, Michinoku Pro, 795 Sellout, Yone Jinjin NC Wellington Wilkins Jr., Terry Boy and Shiryu B. Now Hiro Hoshikawa and Masato Yakashiji Grand Sheik and Mongolian Yuga and Takamichi Noku B. Golden Cross and the Bandit and Hanzo Nakajima, Cross B. Super Delphin Corps Grand Naniwa B. Great Sasuke. July 27, Economowoc, Wisconsin, EA, 150/70 paid. Master Technician B. American Eagle, Pete Sanchez B. Midnight Stranger, Ken Patera B. Dr. X, Buck Zumhofe B. Jake Milliman, Texas Hangman B. Butch and Jake Steele, Zumhofe 1 Battle Royal. July 27, Charlotte, Pro Wrestling Federation 60, Carolina Dreamer B. Russian Assassin, Randy Sledge B. Tyrone Knox, Matt Maxine B. Super Ninja, Terry Austin and Austin Steele B. Italian Stallion and Dreamer, Star Rider B. George South DQ. July 28, Lake Elsinore, California, WWF 3300, Adam Bomb B. Radford, Waylon Mercy B. 123 Kid, WWF Women's Title, Alundra Blaze B. Bertha Faye, Diesel and Shawn Michaels B. IRS and Tatanka, Fatu B. Henry Godwin, WWF Tag Title, Owen Hart and Yokozuna B. Davey Boy Smith and Lex Luger, Casket Match, Undertaker B. Kama. July 28, Warwick, Rhode Island, WWF 1500, Skip B. Aldo Montoya, Jean-Pierre Lafitte B. Duke Dries, Razor Ramon B. Hunterhurst Helmsley Corps, Smoking Guns B. Blue Brothers, Bob Backlund B. Man Mountain Rock, Savio Vega B. Hakushi, King Mabel B. Bam Bam Bigelow. July 28, Charlotte, WCW 2000, Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck B. Marcus Bagwell and Alex Wright, Diamond Dallas Page B. Dave Sullivan, Jim Duggan Kirkimala, WCW TV Title, Renegade D. Paul Orndorff, Harlem Heat B. Steve Regal and Bobby Eaton, U.S. Title, Sting B. Meng DQ, Ric Flair B. Randy Savage. July 28, Middletown, New York, ECW 1400 1056 paid, Jim Powers B. Primo Carnera 3, Hack Myers B. Val Puccio 2 Cold Scorpio B. Mikey Whipwreck, ECW Tag Title, Raven and Steve Richards B. Pit Bulls, Marty Jannetty DDQ Jim Neidhart, ECW TV Title, Eddie Guerrero B. Dean Malenko to win title, Rick and Scott Steiner B. Dudley and Vampire Warrior, ECW Title, Cactus Jack B. Sandman DQ, Public Enemy Kirk Gangstas. July 28, Princeton, West Virginia, SMW, 125, Boo Bradley B. Killer Kyle, Dirty White Boy B. Unabomb, Robert Gibson and Bradley B. Headbangers, Brad Armstrong B. Buddy Landell. July 28, Mexico City, Juan de la Barrera Jim AAA 8000, Power Raiders IVB Angel Mortal and Mr. Condor and Marabunta and Maramoto and Duende Espectritos I and 2 and Jurito Estrada B. Mascara de Sagrada and Octagonchito and Super Muñequito DQ. Los Payasos B. Cibernetico and Teen Yablas Jr. and Super Colo, Octagon and La Parca and Rey Mysterio Jr. and Latin Lover B. Fuerza Guerrera and Blue Panther and Pentagon and Psicosis, Tanan and Pero Aguayo and Mascara Sagrada B. Nikozuna Tonga Kid, and CN Cars and Killer. July 28, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, War, 2100 Sellout, Daitoko B. Tamura, Koki Kitahara B. Masaki Mochizuki, Animal Hamaguchi B. Hiroshi Itakura, Typhoon and Dr. Lucer, Len St. Clair, B. Nobukazu Hirai and Arashi, Koji Kiao B. Nobutaka Araya, NWA Middleweight and Int. Junior Title Unification Match, Ultimo Dragon B. Lionheart to win IJ Title 2655, 1-on-3 Cage Handicap Death Match, Hiromichi Fuyuki and Geto and Jado B. Genichiro Tenryu. July 28, Kanazawa Heisei Ishgun 1000, Michiyoshi Ohara B. Osamu Teranishi Wild Pegasus B. Yuji Nagata, Sabu B. Gran Hamada DQ, Hiroyoshi Tenzan B. Akitoshi Saito Masachono B. Kengo Kimura, Riki Chashu and Masa Saito and Yoshiaki Yatsubi Kunyaki Kobayashi and Tatsutoshi Goto and Shiro Koshinaka. July 28, Tamakawa, All Japan Women, 1790 Yoshiko Tamura and Misae Watanabe B. Yumi Fujimoto and Nobu Endo, Yukashina B. Yumi Fukawa, Kumiko Maekawa and Tomoko Watanabe B. Ri Tamada and Mariko Yoshida, Tashio Yamada and Takako Inoue B. Saki Hasegawa and Kaoru Ito, Manabe Toyota B. Chaparita Asari, Asia Kong and Mima Shimoda and Kyoko Inoue B. Yumiko Hata and Etsuko Mita and Reggie Bennett. July 28, Kimitsu FMW 800 Masato Tanaka B. Haido, Wing Kanemura B. Tanaka, Koji Nakagawa b Hideki Hasaka, Megumi Kudo and Combat Toyota b Miwa Sato and Shark Tsuchiya, Street Fight, Super Leather b Ricky Fuji, Chain Match, Mitsuhiro Matsunaga b Horace Boulder, Mr. Pogo and the Gladiator and Hisakatsu Oya b Hayabusa, and Tetsuhiro Kuroda and Katsutoshi Niyama. July 28 Kaneki, Michinoku Pro, 5500 Sella, Masato Yakashiji b Yamada, Shiryu and Terry Boy b Naohiro Hoshikawa and Hanzo Nakajima, Yone Jinjin DDQ Wellington Wilkins Jr., The Convict b Mongolian Yuga, Grand Naniwa and Grand Sheik, Arias Romero, and Super Delphin and Takamichi Noku b Great Sasuke and King's Cross and Sultan Gargola and the Bandit. July 28 Hannington, New Jersey, NWA 325, Ace Darling b Rich Ratchet, James Kaiser b George Love, Bad Crew DDQ Glenn Osborne and Derek Domino, Gino Caruso b Inferno Kid, Johnny Gunn b Devon Storm, Tommy Cairo b David Sammartino. July 28 Amarillo, Indiana, Treach Phillips Jr. b Doug Masters, Manny Villalobos d Dusty Wolf, Beautiful Bobby b Little Tokyo, Killer Tim Brooks b Randy Rhodes Core, Dick Murdoch b Mr. Wrestling 3, Wolf July 28 Calgary, Canadian Rocky Mountain Wrestling, Chris Kramer b Flip Lee, Katana b Monty Python, Jason Helton b Fernando Valentino Core, Ron Lyons b Cuban Assassin DQ, Super Kungo and Lyons b Dr. Zavago and Cuban Assassin. July 28 Inman, South Carolina, Pro Wrestling Federation, 65, Carolina Dreamer b Russian Assassin, Randy Sledge b Southern Rocker, Mad Maxine b Spoiler, Terry Austin and Austin Steele b Italian Stallion and Dreamer, Star Rider b George South DQ. July 28 Albemarle, North Carolina, Hardcore Pro Wrestling, 32, Hollywood Todd b Black Panther, Bill Smith, Flaming Youth, James Cluntz b Scotty Hotbody, Scott Bradley, John Savage and Hollywood Star b Keith Davis and High Performance, Greg Hart b James Tucker, Texas Outlaw, John Brewer, and Scott Powers b Ricky Rhodes and Chris Hamrick. July 29 State Line, Nevada, WWF, free, 750 halves, 900 paid, Adam Bombi Tatanka 3/4 of a star, Waylon Mercy b 123 Kid 1/2 of 1 star, WWF Women's Title, Alundra Blaze b Bertha Faye 1/4 of 1 star, Cage Match, Shawn Michaels b IRS 1 star, Fata b Henry Godwin 3/4 of a star, WWF Tag Title, Owen Hart and Yokozuna b Lex Luger and Davey Boy Smith 1 1/4 stars, Casket Match, Undertaker b 1/4 of 1 star. July 29 Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, WWF, 2000, Skip b Aldo Montoya 2 3/4 stars, Jean-Pierre Lafitte b Duke Dries 1 1/4 stars, Razor Ramon b Hunter Hurst Helmsley Core 1/4 of 1 star, Smoking Guns b Blue Brothers 2 stars, Bob Backlund b Man Mountain Rock Dud, Savio Vega b Hakushi 2 stars, King Mabel b Bam Bam Bigelow 1 3/4 stars. July 29 Fayetteville, North Carolina, WCW, 2600, Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck b Marcus Bagwell and Alex Wright, Diamond Dallas Page b Dave Sullivan, Jim Duggankirk Kimala, WCW TV Title, Renegade D Paul Orndorff, Harlem Heat b Bobby Eaton and Steve Regal, U.S. Title, Sting b Meng DQ, Randy Savage b Ric Flair. July 29 Williamsburg, Kentucky, SMW 150, Headbangers b Robert Gibson and Rock and Ron, Handicap Match, Brad Armstrong b Jim Cornette and Buddy Landell, Dirty White Boy b Unabomb. July 29 Nagoya Heisei Ishgun, 1500 Kengo Kimura b Osamu Teranishi Yoshiaki Yatsu b Kunyaki Kobayashi, Gran Hamada and Wild Pegasus b Sabu and Black Cat, Masa Saito b Michiyoshi Ohara, Hiroyoshi Tenzan and Masachono b Great Kabuki and Tatsutoshi Goto, Shirokoshi Naoka and Akitoshi Saito b Riki Chashu and Yuji Nagata. July 29 Vienna, Austria, CWA, 1200, Ulf Herman b Drew McDonald, Dave Finley b Victor Kruger DQ Joe Lee and Tony St. Clair b Dan Collins and Hot Rod Price, Rambo D John Hawk, CWA Middleweight Title, Franz Schumann b Virgil. July 29 Halden, New Jersey, NWA, 400, Inferno Kid D Ace Darling, Gino Caruso and David Sammartino b Ghetto Blaster and Brian Rollins, Doink the Clown b Rick Ratchet, Jim Powers and Johnny Gunn b Glenn Osborne and Derek Domino, NWA Title, Dan Severn b Andre Baker, Jimmy Snuka b Metal Maniac, Tommy Cairo DDQ Devon Storm. July 29 Hiratsuka All Japan Women, 1600, Nobu Endo b Yoshiko Tamura Atsuko Mita and Yuka Shina b Chaparita Asari and Yumi Fukawa, Kyoko Inoue b Kumiko Maikawa, Bison Kimura be Kaoru Ito, Reggie Bennett and Takako Inoue be Mima Shimoda and Toshio Yamada. Saki Hasegawa and Mariko Yoshida and Minami Toyota be Asia Kong and Yumiko Hara and Tomoko Watanabe. July 29, Matsushima Michinoku Pro 493. Naohiro Hoshikawa be Yamada, Terry Boy and Shiryu be Masato Yakashiji and the Bandit. King's Cross be Mongolian Yuga, Grand Sheik be Grand Naniwa, Yone Jinjin and Taka Michinoku and the Convict and Super Delphin be Wellington Wilkins Jr. and Hanzo Nakajima and Sultan Gargola and Great Sasuke. July 29, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, Gia Japan, 2,100 sellouts. Sotomura be Nakano, Nagashima be Numao, Kaori Nakayama be Sato, Tomoko Miyaguchi and Kobayashi be Uematsu and Kato, Kaoru be Bomber Hikari, Shigusan Nagio be Bad Nurse Nakamura. July 29, Taylor, Michigan, Midwest Territorial Wrestling, 360, Mike Kelly be Rock Stevens, Brooklyn Brawler be Bobo Brazil Jr. DQ, Scott D'Amore and Osapala be Tommy and Tim Knox, Chris Carter be Mickey Doyle, Calavera Cortez and Rico Rodriguez be Steve Nixon and Sean Casey, Ray Roberts be JT Lightning, triangular match for NTW title, Marty Jannetty won over Al Snow and Bruiser Bedlam. July 29, Jacksonville, Renegade Championship Wrestling, Sean Starr be Penguin, Billy Graham be Rene Depardieu, Damian Lee be Johnny Hughes, Terry Travis be Chris Morton, Snake Watson DDQ Twisted Sister, Jamie Funk and John Douglas be Hartford Hart and Slick V. July 29, Reading, Pennsylvania, All-Star Wrestling Federation, 125, Steve Kelly be Tricky Dicky, Scott Baker be Phaser, Postman be Otto Stark, David Sammartino be Metal Maniac, Damian Kane be Austin Rhodes, Gino Caruso, Adam Flash and Dennis Diamond be Bill Bishop and Quinn Nash and Steve Storm. Purple Haze and Tiny be Dalton Deluxe and Pinky, Ranger 7 be Darren Wise, Jimmy Snuka be Sal Balomo DQ, ECW Tag Title, Raven and Steve Richards DDQ Bad Crew. July 29, Rockingham, North Carolina, Awesome Championship Wrestling, 52, Lumber Warrior be Bill Armstrong, Viper be Assassin, Dozer be Texas Outlaw DQ, American GI be Dark Justice, Sut Powers and Too Hot Thomas be Brian Williams and Ricky Rhodes, Dozer won Battle Royal. July 29, Liberty, North Carolina, Southern Championship Wrestling, Kevin Walker be Billy Montana DQ, Johnny Gilbert be Demon, Hollywood Hunks be Confederate Nightmare and Outlaw Dennis, Billy Montana and Ken Arden be Randy Steele and Gilbert. July 29, Kings Mountain, North Carolina, Pro Wrestling Federation, 125, Carolina Dreamer be Russian Assassin, Randy Sledge be Southern Rocker, Mad Maxine be Super Ninja, Terry Austin and Austin Steele be Dreamer and Italian Stallion, Star Rider be George South DQ. July 29, Minford, Ohio, Wrestling Group International, 155, Andy Runyon be Heartbreaker, Major Massacre be Chris Troy, Tower of Doom be Mr. Sadistic, Damian and Alexander Buddykoff be Bad Company, Master of Disaster be Acid Rocker, Doom and Massacre and Heartbreaker and Disaster be Runyon and Budkoff and Sadistic and Rocker. July 29, Richfield, Wisconsin, Badger State Wrestling, 80, Master Technician be American Eagle, Midnight Stranger be Butch Steele, Jesse Youngblood and Lumberjack Thompson be Chris Curtis Core, Blackjack Bennett be Pete Sanchez, Texas Hangman be Tank Steele, Bennett won Battle Royal. July 29, Nashua, New Hampshire, Ringside Wrestling, 212, Chief Fox be Dave Barron, Scott Sharkey be Robbie Ellis, Maverick Wild be Skull, Gary Gold be Crusher Hughes DQ. July 30, Himeji Heiseish Gun, 1200, Akitoshi Saito be Yuji Nagata, Kengo Kimura be Yoshiaki Yatsu, Black Cat and Sabu be Wild Pegasus and Gran Hamada, Michiyoshi Ohara be Hiroyoshi Tenzan, Masachono be Kunyaki Kobayashi, Riki Chashu and Masa Saito be Shiro Koshinaka and Tatsutoshi Goto. July 30, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, All Japan Women, 2,100 sellout, Yoshiko Tamura and Mina Tanayama be Yukashina and Misai Watanabe, Atsuko Mita and Nobu Endo be Ri Tamada and Yumi Fukawa, Mariko Yoshida be Tomoko Watanabe, Takako Inoue be Chaparita Asari, Reggie Bennett and Yumiko Hata be Asia Kong and Kumiko Makawa, Toshio Yamada and Kyoko Inoue and Mima Shimoda be Manami Toyota and Saki Hasegawa and Kaoru Ito. July 30, Tokyo FMW Koji Nakagawa D Tetsuhiro Kuroda, Hideki Hasaka D Hido, Riki Fujibe Mach Hayato, Megumi Kudo and Combat Toyota and Kaori Nakayama be Bad Nurse Nakamura and Shark Tsuchiya and Miwasato, Masato Tanaka be Wing Kanemura, Hisakatsu Oya be Katsutoshi Niyama. Casket match, Mr. Pogo and Horace Boulder be Mitsuhiro Matsunaga and Super Leather, The Gladiator beat Hayabusa. July 30th, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, Go Gundam 2100 sellout Kazuhiko Matsuzaki beat Seiji Okamura, Takeshi Miyamoto beat Kate Tsukada, Ryuma Go beat Dane Rush, Randy Tyler beat Kishin Kawabata, Mummy and Uchu Majin X beat Jiro Inazuma, Jerry Moro, and Masahiko Takasugi. Go beat Uchu Majin Silver, Jesse Bar and Goro Tsurumi beat Masanobu Kurisu and Demonio Uno, Falls Count Anywhere, Go beat Android. July 30th, Takahata, Michinoku Pro, 275 sellout, Takamichinoku beat Yamada, Yone Jinjin and Grand Naniwa and Grand Sheik beat Wellington Wilkins Jr. and Masato Yakashiji and King's Cross, Convict beat Sultan Gargola, Super Delphin beat Bandit, Great Sasuke and Hanzo Nakajima and Naohiro Hoshikawa beat Shiryu and Terry Boy and Mongolian Yuga. July 30th, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, Wrestle Dream Factory, 380, Masayoshi Motegi beat Uchubayashi, Shinigami beat Koji, Super Crazy and beat Soldier and Azteca, Rashi and Ultimo Dragon beat Fukumenaro and Connect, Motegi and Kamikaze beat Hirofumi Miura and Shinichi Nakano, Crazy 1 Battle Royal. July 31st, Memphis, USWA, 2,500 plus, Stephen Dunn beat Gorgeous George 3, Brian Lee beat Axel Rotten, handicap match, Brandon Baxter and Uptown Karen beat Miss Texas, Bill Dundee beat Pat Tanaka DQ, Dundee and Rotten in Texas, and Dunn beat Lee and George and Baxter and Karen. Randy Hales beat Mark Curtis, unified title, Billy Jack Haynes beat Jerry Lawler DQ, street fight, PG-13 and Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert beat Tracy Smothers and Robert Gibson, and Buddy Landell and Terry Gordy. Special thanks to Rich Palladino, Tracy Byers, Chris Brown, Brian Hildebrand, George Tahinos, Chuck Longerman, Walt Spafford, Norm Dooley, James Titus, Scott Hudson, Jeff Costa, Tom Motley, Dan Paris, Ross Hart, Jimmy Suzuki, Georgianne Macropolis, Sarah Moore, Dan Moreland, Bruce Buchanan, Jay Reddick, Nezaba Mario, Gary Woronchik, George South, Chris Brown, Ted Malicio, Tim Dills, Jerry Lane, Jesse Money, Tony Friedman. Japanese Television Rundown. July 2nd, All Japan, 1. Johnny Ace and the Patriot beat Stan Hansen and Johnny Smith when Patriot pinned Smith after a power bomb. Not much heat when Smith was in. It was stiff as hell when Hansen was in. 2.5 stars, 2. Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi and Satoru Asako beat Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Tamon Honda. Kobashi is such a great worker that he made Honda look like a superstar when Honda was in with him. An incredible match even by All Japan standards with awesome transitions. Finish saw Misawa gave Kawada a tiger suplex and Tao a German suplex Shiner style. Kobashi then pinned Honda with a dragon suplex. This match was better than a lot of matches that will get votes for Match of the Year. 5 stars. July 15th, JWP, 1. Devil Masami and Tomoko Miyaguchi beat Tomoko Kuzumi and Tomomi Kobayashi in 15-13 when Masami pinned Kuzumi with a power bomb. The younger girls were green but most of what they did was well executed. 2.5 stars, 2. Candy Akutsu retained the JWP Junior title pinning Fuseo Naochi with a Northern Lights superplex in 16:03. Some of the work was good but there was little heat. 2 stars, 3. Kaworu and Hikari Fukuoka beat Cutie Suzuki and Hiromi Yagi in 27-16 when Kansai pinned Yagi after a springboard lariat. 3 stars, 4. Mayumi Ozaki pinned Dynamite Kansai in a street fight match billed as dress-up wild fight in 36-41. This wasn't nearly as good as their previous street fight in March. It went too long although it did build up well toward the finish. They used a lot of objects like tables, a chain, numerous chair shots, and wound up tearing down the ring and using the metal rods that connect the turnbuckle to the post on one another. Match had double juice. At one point they brawled all over Korakuen Hall into the upper balcony, and teased throwing each other off the balcony. Numerous near falls in the last 8 minutes until Ozaki chained Kansai to a chair and kept dropkicking her, and finally used her Tequila Sunrise, half Nelson German suplex, for the pin. 3.5 stars. EMLL Fantasma is the latest wrestler to jump here from AAA and there is a lot of talk that Shu El Guerrero and Scorpio Jr. may follow. Americo Rocca won a hair versus hair match over Reyes Velos on July 25th at Arena Coliseo. The top 2 matches at Arena Mexico on July 28th saw Felino, El Brazo and Dr. Wagner Jr. beat Negro Casas and Hector Garza and El Texano via DQ in a 2-straight fall match designed largely to focus on the Garza vs. Brazo feud, while in the main event Mil Mascaras and Dos Caras and Silver King beat the Headhunters and Apollo Dantes. Mascaras is way too old to be in with these guys on top, but the match was decent because Silver King always works hard. Mascaras got his return for doing the clean job 2 weeks earlier by pinning one of the headhunters to win the deciding fall. Pierroth Jr. and Vampiro Canadiense were both suspended for 1 week for disciplinary reasons, although the newspapers didn't go into detail about what that entailed. AAA. A lot more news behind the scenes than in the ring. First off, it appears there is tremendous pressure from the wrestling syndicate against AAA for circumventing the strike by closing down the company and reopening under another name. At the July 28th show at Juan de la Barrera Gym in Mexico City, after the matches were over, Pero Aguayo did an Onita-like interview, almost crying, telling fans that they would like to wrestle for them more often, but they are having problems with the syndicate, and told fans they need their support now more than ever. The show drew a near sellout of 8,000 fans despite a main event on paper that looked weak. Pero and Conan and Mascara Sagrada vs Yokozuna and Killer and Cien Caras, and no stip matches underneath. Things got so bad that the chairs for ringside didn't even arrive at the building until 8:30 p.m., so the show couldn't start until 9:10 p.m., which was said to be because of the syndicate. In the main event, Killer, who is a Mexican under the mask but his gimmick is that he's an American, and Cien Caras got into a shoving match until finally Yokozuna, in his debut in Mexico, joined with Killer to turn on Caras, and they beat on him and he juiced, which Cien Caras' gimmick used to be that he never lost a stip match and never juiced, but in the past few weeks he's done both. Eventually Conan and Aguayo helped him out and Aguayo extended his hand for the handshake, but Caras walked off. But later they were put back together and Caras did a handshake and walked off. It appears they are building to Conan and Aguayo and Caras feuding with Yokozuna and 2 other Samoans, which are said to be Samu and Yokozuna, although I'd guess the latter is pretty unlikely. Yokozuna didn't seem to get over in his debut. The AAA office is supposed to be returning the IWC belts. Ron Scholar's press release stripping the different guys of their belts, who in 2 of the 3 cases didn't even have them anymore, ran in 2 newspapers, but most of the papers that cover wrestling didn't cover it. Antonio Pena finally commented on it, saying that the belts are phantom belts because the IWC has no wrestlers of its own and runs no shows. He said that championships in Lucha Libre don't mean anything unless they're defended in Mexico, and that in the United States that only championships that mean anything are WWF and WCW titles. Pena said that IWC, which was originally formed as a Pena idea in 1993 to do a worked promotion versus promotion feud, was his idea, and it was his idea to form an organization and have Scholar as president. The Misterioso vs. Volador match from July 14th in Tijuana will air this coming weekend on Galavision. Told the match didn't hold up on television. The 2 Hours X show this week was taped July 16th in Mexicali. It wasn't the caliber of the shows the previous week, but included Rey Mysterio winning the IWC middleweight belt from Fuerza Guerrera and the typical Rey Mysterio Jr. 6-man where he does his springboard Liger dive into a Frankensteiner on the floor on Psicosis. In Angel Azteca's television return, which aired 2 weeks ago in Mexico City, they pushed hard he's going to feud with a Payaso Rojo, red-haired Payaso, who put him out of action for almost 1 year with the Tombstone Piledriver. All Japan. 1 corrections from last week's report from the July 24th Budokan Hall show. Jumbo Tsuruta didn't work a 15-minute singles match against Mighty Inoue, it was actually a 6-man tag with Tsuruta pinning Inoue to take the fall. No complete cards have been announced for the next tour, which doesn't begin for about 3 more weeks, but they announced there will be 4 title matches during the tour, which ends with the September 10th Budokan Hall show. Besides Mitsuharu Misawa defending the Triple Crown against Akira Tao at Budokan, a second title match with Dan Crawford defending the junior title against Yoshinari Ogawa will be on that show. The other title bouts are September 2nd with Takao Mori and Jun Akiyama defending the Asian Tag Team titles against Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton, and August 30th in Toyohashi with Tao and Toshiaki Kawada defending the tag titles against Johnny Ace and the Patriot. July 23rd television show saw the rating fall down to a 1.1, or barely 1/3 of what they had been averaging in the news slot. Matches from Budokan, Misawa vs. Kawada and Tao vs. Kobashi, should air on July 30th through August 13th. With a 30-minute show, the top 3 matches, the 2 mentioned above and Johnny Ace vs. the Patriot, should all be a complete show. No word on quality of the matches, although they looked good in photos. New Japan. Heisei Ishigun toured all week, with the biggest show being July 25th at the Yokohama Bunka Gum before 4,000 fans, with the return of Kazuo Yamazaki to New Japan after a 7-year absence, beating Tatsutoshi Goto in the main event with the short arm scissors in 6:16. Most of the undercard consisted of surprises such as Shiro Koshinaka and Kengo Kimura beating Riki Choshu and Kensuke Sasaki when Kimura pinned Choshu, Michiyoshi Ohara pinning Hiroyoshi Tenzan, Koji Kanemoto pinning Wild Pegasus and Shinjiro Otani pinning Sabu. Ohara pinned Tenzan a second time during the tour on July 30th, which is amazing by Japan standards to have a guy who just last month headlined at Budokan challenging for Keiji Muto's IWGP title, doing clean jobs twice for a prelim guy from another promotion. July 15th TV show did a 1.4 rating and the July 22nd show was preempted. Other Japan notes. Korakuen Hall was booked solid this past week with full houses almost every night. Kendo Nagasaki's Big Japan Pro Wrestling drew a sellout on July 25th, which included a 5-minute exhibition between Satoru Sayama and his protege, the newest Tiger Mask, while also selling out Korakuen Hall this week were All Japan Women, Ryuma Goes Go Gundam, Chigusa Nagayo's Gia Japan and War, which ran a major show on July 28th. The only weak house was July 30th for Masayoshi Motegi's Wrestle Dream Factory group, which included UWA Stars Connect and Super Crazy plus Ultimo Dragon, but only drew about 380 fans, which may have been the smallest Korakuen Hall wrestling crowd of the year. At the War show, it was headlined by a 1-on-3 cage match with Genichiro Tenryu facing Gedo, Jado and Hiromichi Fuyuki in an elimination match. Tenryu beat both Jado and Gedo. Tenryu tried a crossbody off the top of the cage on Fuyuki, who rolled through and scored the pin. Fuyuki went nuts challenging Tenryu to a singles match. After Tenryu left and Fuyuki celebrated, Shinja Kiyosato debuted with his WWF gimmick and said he wasn't there to join with Fuyuki but was going to form his own group. Earlier in the week, Fuyuki said in the papers that Shinja was going to show up on the card and be his manager. Also on the show, Ultimo Dragon finally beat Lionheart Chris Jericho to win the International Junior title and also retain his NWA middleweight belt in 26:55 of a unification match. Typhoon Fred Ottman and Dr. Luther, Len St. Clair, both made their war debuts on that show. Luther is going to form a tag team on the next tour, which is August 27th through August 31st, with Big Titan. Titan said that he's got both Luther and a mystery man to form Team Canada, which was their gimmick in FMW, in War. War is also going through a reorganization, with a name change from Wrestle and Romance to Wrestle Association R, keeping the same initials. Fuyuki will be pushed as the main star, with Tenryu being phased down as he's trying to phase down his career. UWFI announced its next card on August 18th at Tokyo Bay NK Hall, headlined by Gary Albright vs. Kiyoshi Tamura, Nobuhiko Takada vs. Tatsuo Nakano and Masahito Kakihara vs. Yoji Anjo. LLPW runs its third anniversary show on August 4th at Korakuen Hall, headlined by Eagle Sawai vs. Shinobu Kandori. Speaking of Kandori, judging from the post-show photos with the girls' faces all puffed up, it looks like the L1 tournament, if it was a work, was one of the stiffest works on record. FMW ended its tour on July 30th in Tokyo with its preliminary wrestlers tournament ending with Masato Tanaka beating Wing Kanemura in the finals. Also on the show they had a casket match where Mr. Pogo and Horace Boulder beat Mitsuhiro Matsunaga and Super Leather when Leather and Matsunaga broke up their tag team. Main event saw the Gladiator pin Hayabusa in 10:13 with a power bomb. Next FMW tour starts August 22nd. They'll be doing a tournament in late August through September 26th to determine the World Brass Knucks champion since Hayabusa had vacated the title. Chigusa Nagayo will appear on some FMW shows in August as part of the deal, where FMW woman wrestler Bad Nurse Nakamura headlined and did the job for Nagayo on Nagayo's July 29th Korakuen Hall main event. Michinoku Pro opened its World Masked Man Championship tournament on July 27th. The main event on the first night of the tour had Grand Naniwa score his first singles win over Great Sasuke. Besides those two, also in the tournament are the Bandit, Canada, King's Cross, England Grand Sheik, EMLL, Golden Cross, USA, Mongolian Yuga, The Convict, USA, Super Delphin and Dos Caras. Don't know who are the various wrestlers playing these roles. Go's show on July 30th included Oregon wrestlers Jesse Barr, Randy Tyler and Dane Rush, along with Go's usual assortment of space aliens and former Stampede Wrestling star Jerry Morrow. Go worked 3 times on the show, winning over Rush, Uchu Majin Silver, and the Android. Terry Funk, who has been out of action with a serious back injury the past few months, is feeling better and is going to work the entire IWA tour and not just the stadium show. Tour starts in mid-August. USWA, as mentioned earlier, the territory is the hottest it has been in years with the SMW vs. USWA feud. On the July 24th Memphis show, with Ricky Morton no showing, it wound up as Robert Gibson and Tracy Smothers and Buddy Landell beating PG-13 and Tommy Rich in an old-style Texas death match when Terry Gordy came out of the crowd and gave Wolfie D 2 pile drivers and he was unable to answer the bell. This set up the 8-man with Doug Gilbert joining the USWA team on July 31, which Team USWA won, which drew an even larger crowd. Gilbert did the interview of his career, almost in tears at times, talking about his loyalty to USWA and talking about Eddie Gilbert. I guess the gimmick they are doing is that SMW is trying to take over the territory. Smothers has been doing great heel interviews on the other side of the coin. Gilbert returned after being gone a few weeks for the IWA tour in Japan as Freddy Krueger, as the mystery opponent on July 24 against Buddy Landel. Mark Curtis gave Landel a chain, but it wound up with Hales getting involved, and in the confusion, Gilbert pinned Landel and Hales counted the fall. Curtis and Landel jumped Hales and Gilbert after the match and left them laying. Gilbert talked about, even though Hales had him suspended for going nuts on TV a few weeks ago, that his loyalty is still with USWA as his hometown promotion. PG-13 said they don't like Rich or Gilbert, but they do respect them, and Gilbert talked about that he hadn't seen Terry Gordy since he was a little boy. The semifinal on July 31 was a unified title match where Jerry Lawler lost via DQ, thus kept the title, when he was caught throwing Billy Jack Haynes over the top rope. Haynes had thrown Lawler over the top behind the ref's back several times earlier in the show. Even though the WWF was in town and drew huge crowds with television tapings the day before in each city, both Louisville on July 25 and Evansville on July 26 saw the crowds well above average. In Louisville, Landel challenged Lawler for the title and Curtis gave Landel a chain which he used to get the pin, but local ref Joe Wheeler reversed the decision and Curtis and Landel beat up Lawler and Wheeler afterwards. That show was headlined by Gibson and Landel as a tag team, with Morton out against PG-13 in a death match when Smothers broke a bottle over JC Ice's head. SMW. News pretty much non-existent from here aside from the lead story, since they only ran 2 small spot shows this past week. Heavenly Bodies will be in for all of Fan Week, August 4th to August 13th, and then return as regulars in September. No word on where Brian Armstrong fits in, although he's supposed to start this coming week. They will be taping television at the August 4th Knoxville and August 12th Johnson City show, so besides the matches advertised, expect angles to lead through September, including a Tracy Smothers and Dirty White Boy vs. Heavenly Bodies program over the tag team titles. The first card after Fan Week will be August 13th in Charlotte with a tag team tournament with Heavenly Bodies, Boo Bradley, and Bobby Fulton, Tommy Rich, and Punisher, Robert Gibson, and Headbangers Al Snow and Unabomb and Smothers and White Boy, plus Buddy Landel, who I'm told did the greatest interview of his career for his match with Shawn Michaels that aired this past weekend, versus Brad Armstrong. The Landel interview was him talking about his life, saying that he was from Knoxville even though he's been billed from other cities in the past, how he grew up watching Ron Wright wrestle on television, and turned pro at the age of 17. That by the age of 23, he was getting shots at the NWA World title and people were talking about him as a future world champion, but he threw it all away due to drugs and alcohol. He blamed drugs and alcohol for him losing his job with the NWA, and how he spent the next 10 years blowing one job after another because of it, and how his career steadily went downhill until he finally asked God for help, said he's dropped weight, given up the drugs and alcohol, and said he was going to win the IC title for the people of Knoxville, which, judging from everyone's reaction to the interview, he may wind up getting cheered at the show. It's not certain about that, since Michaels is one of the most popular wrestlers in the country right now, and Landel will be managed by Cornette, although Michaels' interview was almost heelish. Landel in the interview told Cornette he isn't to interfere in the match. ECW only show this past week was July 28th at the Orange County Fair in Middletown, New York, drawing 1,056 paid and about 1,400 total, which is impressive since the only television in the market is MSG Cable and they have a revolving time slot. The show was held during a rainstorm which probably held down attendance and definitely hurt the work rate, as the ring and ropes were too slippery for a lot of the usual high-risk stuff. Taz, Pete Sinurka, was in a neck brace as of the weekend, but his neck injury has improved substantially in the past week. He won't work August 5th in Philadelphia but should be back by the end of the month. The television shows over the next 2 weeks will be built around the 2 Eddie Guerrero-Dean Malenko title change matches. Snot Dudley, Anthony Michaels, was in a serious car accident, so that tag team has already become a single, Dudley aka Jeff Bradley. Dudley and Vampire Warrior were the opponents for the Steiners' debut match on July 28th. It will probably now be Steiners and Guerrero versus 2 Cold Scorpio and Malenko and Chris Benoit on the August 5th ECW Arena show, although there was talk of putting Cactus Jack in the Taz spot for this match as well, and no final decision was made as of Sunday night. Matches on TV the past 2 weeks with Taz and Guerrero versus Scorpio and Malenko have been excellent. Guerrero doesn't have Shawn Michaels' charisma, but is actually an even better worker because he's got a wider variety of moves, and ironically, Even though he has the Mexican-style upbringing, because of his years in Japan, his style looks more like a match, whereas a Michaels match when he's got his working shoes on. And Guerrero seems to a higher percentage of the time, looks more like an exhibition of awesome spots. Guerrero does awesome spots, but they don't have the feel of looking as setup. Of course, Malenko is better than anyone Michaels has regularly worked with, so that could make a difference. Steve Richards did a great interview on this past week's television show shot at 5 a.m. on the beach with Raven and Beulah McGillicuddy. Richards talked about growing up and watching wrestling from Florida, imitating Kevin Sullivan, and talking about the angle where the Purple Haze, Mark Lewin, came out of the sea. Ricky Morton has been in negotiations to come in, which if it should happen, would be as a heel as part of Raven's team. The most heat on television has been placed on 911 attempting to choke slam Bill Alfonso. They do a segment every week where 911 comes close, but Alfonso escapes every time. Todd Gordon's Carver W. Reed jewelry store was broken into and robbed on July 27. No word on how much was taken. Here and there. The latest on UFC is that Dan Severn won't be on the September 8th show but will be brought back for the December pay-per-view. Severn wants a rematch against Ken Shamrock on that show, and there's talk of him going to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs for 6 weeks to get ready for the match. K1 out of Japan has also made an offer for a UFC rules match with Severn vs. Kimo in the interim. Tank Abbott had also been contacted about putting together another UFC-type event headlined with him against Kimo, but that isn't going to take place, so word we're getting is the odds are he'll be at the next UFC if they want him. Most of the speculation seems to be in the direction of either Shamrock vs. Toktarov or Shamrock vs. Abbott, although none of this is coming from Semaphore Entertainment Group. Pancrase is running its biggest show of the year on September 1st, and with Shamrock as its star, there's a conflict there, and I don't know after Shamrock did everything right in preparation for the last UFC that he'd go to Japan for a big show match 7 days before a match against an opponent of the caliber of either Toktarov or Abbott. Jacques Rougeau's next major show is August 15th in Verdun, headlined by Abdullah the Butcher vs. Richard Charlon, with Abdullah's manager, Frenchie Martin, handcuffed to Rougeau. Also Ron Trottier and Michelle Payette vs. Warlord and Barbarian, King Tonga, Meng vs. Kimala, and Big Bubba Rogers vs. Dan Crawford. Rougeau is attempting to forge an alliance with WCW and get them the WWF time slot in Montreal. Missy Hyatt is upset because she was advertised as being at the Coast to Coast Wrestling television taping promoted by Sunny Beach, and claims not only had she not agreed to appear, but was never even contacted beforehand and didn't even know about it until after it had taken place. Beach's next show is August 19th at the Westchester Community College with Marty Jannetty vs. Warlord, Beach vs. Iron Sheik, and Crash the Terminator vs. Dave Powers. Condolences to longtime reader Kent Herron over the loss of his father. Congrats to longtime reader Steve Friedlander over his recent marriage. Cleveland All-Pro Wrestling on August 25th at St. Michael's Hall in Cleveland with Jimmy Snuka vs. Metal Maniac on top, plus Jimmy Valiant, Bruiser Bedlam, and more, plus August 26th in McGillard. But Bill Scullion will be running lots of indie shows in the Ontario area under the banner of Outlaw Championship Wrestling over the next few months. Those interested in bookings should call 416-431-0114. Mid-Eastern Wrestling Federation at 410-385-3355 is looking for wrestlers, managers, and referees interested in working in the Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania area. British wrestler Andre Baker used his frequent flyer miles to come into Haledon, New Jersey on July 29 for a match against Severn. Heard Baker looked terrible. Also on that show, Tommy Cairo and Devon Storm reportedly tore the house down in a 4-stars match. Osamu Nishimura is now wrestling for Brian Dixon All-Star Wrestling Group in England. Burt Prentice had scheduled an anniversary show for July 31st in Jonesboro, Arkansas, with Missy Hyatt being brought in as a heel manager for the show. The latest Muscular Development magazine has a huge feature on Don Ross. Ooh on August 5th in Tillicum, Washington, headlined by Buddy Rose and Kat vs. Sabrina and Dave Dobashi. The Hearts ran 2 shows on July 22nd and July 23rd as part of the Rockyford Rodeo about 50 miles from Calgary, with Bruce, Keith, and Ross Hart working the shows along with former Stampede wrestlers Great Gama, Cuban Assassin, and Biff Wellington. Sue Hart's grandson, 9-year-old Harry Smith, son of Davey Boy and Diana Smith, wrestled on the second night as part of a kids' tag team match against 2 other of Hart's grandsons, Teddy and Matthew Annis. Ken Patera, 51, worked an indie show on July 27 in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. Patera, who has undergone hip replacement surgery since his wrestling career ended, took no bumps. Abdullah Farouk Jr. is looking for wrestlers to work Ontario. Please send photos to P.O. Box 1112, Peterborough, ONTK9J7H4, or call 705-876-7385. Virgil was brought to Austria on July 29 for a shot at CWA middleweight champion Franz Schumann. Steel City Wrestling in-game Grant Miller promoter moved the August 27 show to August 26 at 1 p.m. in Pittsburgh at the Martial Arts and Sports Center in order to not conflict with SummerSlam. Dan Severn will appear on the show and they are doing a Pancrase-style rules shoot middleweight tournament. Severn will also be doing a wrestling/submission clinic from 9 to noon. Lots of rumors about Friday Night Wrestling returning to the Dallas Sportatorium in September. Nothing we're hearing other than local wrestlers hoping in that it's just the talking stage, but the Grizzly Smith would somehow be involved, as would be his son, Sam Houston. Johnny Valentine ran a show on July 28 in Grand Prairie, Texas, billed as a shoot wrestling show that only drew around 50 fans. The card had no high spots and it was said it was really bad and looked as though it possibly could have been shoot. After taking a few weeks off, Canadian Rocky Mountain Wrestling returned to Calgary on July 28, but the bad news is that August 11 may be the final show as the community association which houses the cards decided not to renew the lease agreement. Promoter Ed Langley is searching right now for a new location. WCW. A big week upcoming as they have Disney tapings from August 1 to August 5 in Orlando, a pay-per-view on August 4 taped from Korea, and the August 6 Clash from Daytona Beach, plus TV tapings on August 8 in Gainesville, Georgia, and August 9 back to Center Stage. Other taping dates in August are August 21 at Center Stage, August 22 in Anderson, South Carolina, and August 30 at Center Stage. It's virtually a lock that the first TNT show will air live on September 4 from the Mall of America in Minneapolis. The current word is that they'll be doing 3 hours of taping every Monday night, with the third hour airing live on TNT and the first 2 hours then airing the following Saturday as the WCW Saturday Night Show. The September 11 taping will be in Miami at the Knight Center. There is some talk that Marcus Bagwell and USWA prelim wrestler Scott Anton, a Tom Zenk lookalike, will be put together as a Fabulous Ones type tag team. They may also put the State Patrol back together, Dale Veazey and Dwayne Bruce, as a push jobber team similar to the role the Heavenly Bodies had in WWF. Based on post-Clash tapings, it appears they are going to do an angle at the Clash where Sherry takes a bump on her head and develops amnesia, and wakes up in love with Rob Parker. But at this point Parker wants nothing to do with her. However, Parker somehow has lost the ring Elvis gave him, and apparently Sherry has it. And if you thought that was silly, wait until you hear the one about Big Bubba Rogers having returned, but he keeps itching himself because he's allergic to Dave Sullivan's Rabbit Ralph. Anyway, syndicated tapings on July 25 in Dalton, Georgia before 1000 saw Bubba over Dave Sullivan, which set up the angle where Bubba keeps scratching himself. Brian Pillman pinned Alex Wright and the kids were cheering heavily for Wright. This was a 3.5 stars match, but there must have been something wrong at some point because later in the show they went in and did almost the same exact match, this time 3 stars because the fans had seen it all before. Ric Flair and Arnold Anderson beat Steve and Scott Armstrong in a 3.5 stars match. Mang and Kurosawa worked as a tag team managed by Parker. After Craig Pittman won a squash, a large sound effect came over the PA and Pittman went into a paranoid act. It's the entrance music for Cobra, who is playing a babyface military man gimmick to feud with Pittman. Bubba then wrestled Jim Duggan and Bubba got the pin with his feet on the ropes. Dave Sullivan did a run-in to tell the ref and Dave and Bubba locked up, which led to Bubba starting to scratch himself all over again. Duggan then jumped out to ringside and grabbed some black tape and wrapped his fist up, jumped in the ring and KO'd Bubba. They're going to do taped fist matches between Duggan and Bubba. In the dark matches, Nasty Boys over Blue Bloods and Sting over Meng via DQ. Chris Cruz is taking Gordon Soley's spot on the Pro Show and did the interviews. Randy Savage said at the Clash that he and Sting would be watching Hogan's back against the Dungeon of Doom, and Savage said he would be at ringside doing color commentary during the Hogan vs. Kimala match on the August 6 Clash. Duggan did an interview claiming that his great-grandmother was taped fist champ of County Cork to set up his new gimmick in taped fist matches. On July 26 at Center Stage before a full house of 785, in matches that air on August 12, during a Harlem Heat squash against John Wheeler and Larry Santo, Sherry didn't come out with heat. Sherry walked out in the middle of the match like she had just had the ultimate orgasm wearing a new diamond necklace. Renegade beat Max Muscle in 20 seconds. Flair, with Anderson at ringside, wrestled Wright once again in a 3.5 stars match. So Anderson and Flair don't do a complete turn at the Clash if they are together here. However, Flair kept wanting Anderson to interfere and Anderson kept refusing. After Flair won with the figure 4 using ropes for leverage, he and Anderson had an argument, followed by an interview where Anderson said he's tired of Flair always looking to him for help, and the two had a classic interview with Flair telling Anderson he's going to give him a lesson, Anderson saying Flair isn't man enough to give him any kind of a lesson. And Flair saying that he hopes Anderson has money to take a taxi back home because he isn't riding in the limo. Chad Branch, who apparently can really sing given the timing, what original idea, debuted. Billed from Nashville doing a country singer gimmick. Apparently he resembled Curly Howard of Three Stooges fame, with fans in the crowd catcalling things like, "Hey, Mo. Hey, Mo." As a wrestler he was terrible and didn't get over. So naturally he's in line for a big push. For the August 19th television show, Cobra, Thunder of the Old Thunder and Lightning Team, debuted using a Cobra clutch finisher, and looked awful. Johnny B. Bad won a squash doing a Liger flip dive near the finish. Kurosawa squash using the Fujiwara armbar finish. The gimmick is all the jobbers he faces end up with medical treatment for a broken arm. He looks like he's wrestling in slow motion. During a Harlem Heat squash, Shuri comes out with them, but then leaves. She comes back out during the match, not paying attention to the match and putting on lipstick. TV main is Bagwell and Wright versus Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater. Shuri came out during the match and showed the necklace to Parker, who then freaks out. Shuri then kisses Parker, who now doesn't want her and tries to run away. Shuri chases him, trying to rip his pants off. Weekend house shows were July 28th in Charlotte, drawing about $2,000 and $20,000. July 29th in Fayetteville, drawing $2,627,000, and July 30th in Greenville, South Carolina, drawing $3,736,000, which aside from Charlotte is all above average for those cities. Flair vs. Savage headlined, which makes the above average houses inexplicable. Savage won in Fayetteville and Greenville, but in Charlotte they did a role reversal with Savage playing total heel since Flair was going to get cheered no matter what he did anyway, and Flair getting KO'd with a foreign object. But ref Randy Anderson found out, restarted the match, and Flair got a schoolboy for the pin. TV ratings saw WCW Saturday Night on July 22nd do a 1.9, main event a 1.6 and Pro a 1.4. WCW officially still has television in Toronto, but it's almost always preempted. Apparently during his last broadcast, Gordon Soley, during a horrible Dave Sullivan squash, simply said, "And they wonder why I'm leaving." Hulk Hogan during a horrible interview over the weekend tried to strongly hint that Paul White was Andre the Giant's son, talking about how he remembered him at the Silverdome watching the match. There has been a lot of talk of billing him as Andre the Giant Jr. Jim Hellwig had a 3-hour meeting with WCW in Huntington Beach, and Hellwig has told people the only holdup is money, but WCW officials have indicated a deal is unlikely, partially because of problems merchandising a Vince McMahon-created character. Unlike Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, who were both big wrestling stars with their same gimmicks before they ever went to WWF. The latest idea, subject to change, is that the Monday night show will have Eric Bischoff and Bobby Heenan and possibly a third person doing the announcing, which may be Steve McMichael, a former NFL football player who the WWF was considering using it recently as a few days ago. McMichael signed with WCW on July 31st and will start out as an announcer, but will be going to the WCW school, and the idea is that he'll wind up being a wrestler. He was to be introduced to the wrestlers at the Disney tapings. If you recall, McMichael shows a lot of fire, as he did great in his angle earlier this year on Raw with Kama, but almost has to be a heel because he's got real cocky mannerisms. WWF. For reasons that nobody can fully explain, WWF drew a remarkable crowd of 10,500 fans and $95,000 to the Kiel Center in St. Louis on July 26th for the final taping of Wrestling Challenge. The crowd, combined with the strong In Your House show, has upped morale. The crowd is even more inexplicable because St. Louis has no local television. They spent a good deal of radio and newspaper advertising, plus blanketed the 3 USA Network shows, but still. The thing to show how difficult wrestling has become is that even with that size of a crowd, the show was probably a money loser, in fact almost definitely was, with a building rent tax, high advertising costs, and having to do television in a strong union building. There are other bright signs as far as house show business is concerned, as Pittsburgh's advance for SummerSlam on July 27th, and this is with almost nothing announced locally besides Undertaker vs. Kama, and maybe because nothing is announced locally because the card doesn't look so hot, was something like 13,000 tickets and $320,000, so for perhaps the first time ever, the advance figures they are quoting on television are actually legit. In addition, the July 24th Monday Night Raw show with the Bret Hart vs. Hakushi and Shawn Michaels vs. Jimmy Del Rey matches, while not only the best Raw show in months, also drew a 3.8 rating, which would be one of the 3 or 4 best in history. Record is still 3.9 for Undertaker vs. Jeff Jarrett. Actually, the figure is probably more attributable to being the day after a pay-per-view, which usually boosts the ratings out of curiosity for those who didn't buy the show to get the results and those who did to find out what's happening next. It looks pretty strong that WrestleMania will be at the Pond in Anaheim. Upcoming television taping dates are August 14th in Worcester, August 15th in Portland, Maine, August 28th in Canton, August 29th in Erie, September 25th in Pueblo, Colorado, and September 26th in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Officially, In Your House 2 in Nashville drew 6,482 fans and $74,930. The Raw taping the next night in Louisville drew 4,181 and $55,580. There has been talk of replaying Raw on Thursday nights on USA, but that is far from a done decision. There were a lot of signs pro Jeff Jarrett, Jerry Lawler and Sid Vicious at these sets of tapings because all are babyfaces in the USWA territory. From people there, in particular in Nashville and Louisville, it appeared the majority had no knowledge or little knowledge of USWA, but those who did were very vocal, and there were lots of positive chants for Lawler at the Raw taping that will have to be edited out of the show. Sid was out of action this past weekend with bone spurs in his neck. He was bothered by this for the past month, which to a degree explains why he couldn't do a thing in the pay-per-view match, and then at the tapings in Evansville, Indiana, his arm went numb so he missed St. Louis. He's scheduled back for the August 12th show at Madison Square Garden. MSG was originally headlined by Diesel and Shawn Michaels versus Sid and Jeff Jarrett, but now it'll be men on a mission in the heel spot, with Sid being moved down to face Ramon and Bret Hart versus Jean-Pierre Lafitte. The pay-per-view update segments have been renamed Insider segments, and WWF is pushing going online after every Raw show and major show. One of the reasons they can't drop the Jarrett/Roadie deal on television is there is a lot of money tied up in marketing of the song. Apparently Tony Norris and Rico Suave did so good in their first tryout match in South Padre Island that by the time they got to Houston, they were told to tone it down so as not to upstage the card. Norris is the only one Titan was interested in, and Suave was just there so Norris could work with someone he was comfortable with. Norris will probably be brought to a taping soon so the brass can see him live. Besides the Raw doing the 3.8, last weekend Action Zone did a 1.5 and Mania a 1.3. Oz and Mania both had Shawn vs. IRS from the previous Raw as the TV main. This week, both Oz and Mania aired the Raw Bret Hart vs. Hakushi match, although that was one match you don't get tired of after two airings. Shane McMahon did the ring announcing at some of the B shows this past weekend, which were headlined by Mabel over Bam Bam Bigelow due to Mo's interference. The A-Team over the weekend worked in Class A minor league baseball stadiums in Lake Elsinore, California and Rancho Cucamonga, California, drawing just over $40,000 in each site, and July 29th worked in State Line, Nevada, doing $39,000. With Sid and Jarrett missing the shows, the first two nights were headlined by Diesel and Michaels over IRS and Tatanka plus Undertaker beating Kama in casket matches. The third night Diesel was pulled from the show to do a PR deal so Michaels beat IRS in a cage match. The show in State Line was said to have been terrible with nothing over 1 1/4 stars since they never mentioned the 4 no-shows beforehand, Jarrett, Sid, Roadie and Diesel, and just had Manny Garcia run down the card people would see, and when they said Shawn vs. IRS in a cage, the crowd groaned and it pretty well killed the show. The show had only 55 minutes of wrestling, and between the regular intermission and the cage setup and teardown, since they put the cage match in the middle of the show, there were 40 minutes of intermission. Card for SummerSlam at this point looks like Diesel vs. Mabel for WWF title, Michaels vs. Sid for IC title, Yokozuna and Owen Hart vs. Davey Boy Smith and Lex Luger for WWF tag title, Alundra Blaze vs. Bertha Faye for women's title, Bret Hart vs. Isaac Yankem and Skip vs. Barry Horowitz in a match where there must be a winner. As you can see, on paper, Skip vs. Horowitz looks like the best match. On TV the biggest push was for Michaels vs. Jerry Lawler, and it's not etched in stone about the Sid match because apparently those at Titan realize how bad the show looks on paper when it comes to work rate and want to at least get a decent quality match or two added. The situation with William Perry and Steve McMichael is this. There was consideration given to making them a tag team, figuring it would get notoriety and press, but they weren't going to work the Owen and Yokozuna on SummerSlam. The idea was possibly to debut them against the Heavenly Bodies, since the Bodies aren't being booked and all four could go to the gym and put together a passable match since Bodies are such good workers. Talks broke down because Perry wanted a guaranteed contract and WWF wasn't willing to change its steadfast policy against guaranteed contracts, particularly for someone who has no proven ability to be marketable in this environment or be able to work, not to mention he had a weight problem his entire football career with $1 million contract, so how would he handle his weight for 20% of the money in pro wrestling? Particularly since Perry had made it clear he didn't want to go on the road and only wanted to do big shows. McMichael, whose NFL career is over, Packers released him, was willing to do whatever WWF wanted to get in pro wrestling but wound up with WCW since they came up with a plan to use him faster. WWF is claiming 1.0 buy rates for In Your House I Am King of the Ring, figures 20 to 35% higher than other estimates, but claiming 0.8 for the most recent pay-per-view. According to some, greatly overestimating how much money it would be earning from WrestleMania and making financial commitments based on what they expected to get, which was basically millions of more dollars than they ended up getting. Although there have been people cut and salaries cut, it isn't as if paychecks are being missed or going out late as some have reported. A slight correction. Jean-Pierre Lafitte's actual real name is Pierre Carl Ullett, spelled like that. We've had the name as Carl Pierre and the wrong last name spelling. Several Michigan and Ohio indie wrestlers have met with Carl DeMarco at the WWF Toronto offices. Next show in Boston at the new Boston Garden will be October 5th. Dean Douglas did his second report card segment on Raw, no better than the first. The gimmick is he scratches his fingers on the blackboard to get attention, then gives the babyfaces an F. They also did a first ending a show with a match in progress in a tag title match with Hart and Yokozuna vs. Ramon and Vega. That idea gets really old when it's done twice in the same year, but this is the first time I can recall WWF doing it in a long time. TV taping rundowns. July 24th in Louisville for Raw opened with Bigelow over Tatanka in a strap match. Then they taped the match that aired July 31st on Raw. Hart and Yokozuna first lost to Vega and Ramon when Ramon pinned Hart, and were announced as new champions, but the decision was rescinded and the match restarted because Hart wasn't the legal man. After they went off the air, they ended the match in the building with Yoko and Owen simply walking out to be counted out. On television they announced that next week, August 7th, they would restart the match. That was taped later in the show and ended with Yokozuna leg dropping and pinning Vega. It should be noted that live, Lawler was shaking hands with fans and playing babyface, and at one point during the show they announced the USWA would be running in the same building the next night and mentioned Lawler vs. Buddy Landel as being one of the main events. Also in a match for next week, Diesel beat Mo in a really bad match that lasted 11 minutes. Mabel and Michaels ended up at ringside and Michaels got the worst of it, leading to a Diesel/Mabel brawl. After that, Michaels and Lawler got into another argument, which was the hottest angle at the taping. The match live had no heat at all since it followed the Hart-Hakushi match and obviously couldn't follow that. During the Lawler/Michaels angle there were tons of pro-Lawler chants, so obviously that will be edited. In a dark match, Undertaker beat Kama in a casket match, in a bout that'll probably air on TV. Bret and Michaels beat Blue Brothers when Bret used the sharpshooter, and the show ended with Diesel pinning Sid in just 2:30 of a horrible cage match. People left very unhappy because the cage match was so bad. At the Superstars taping July 25th in Evansville, among the top TV bouts and angles saw Fatu over Rad Radford, aired this past weekend, Ramon and 1-2-3 Kid and Vega over Blue Brothers and Uncle Zeb, already aired, Michaels over Skip in 5:22 of a match not nearly as good as you'd think. Barry Horowitz came to ringside during this match and after the match Michaels practically had sex with Sonny in the ring. Hakushi beat Aldo Montoya in a good match. Mabel did an interview talking about Diesel. In a Coliseum video match, Mabel pinned Ramon. Skip wrestled Horowitz but Skip suplexed him on the floor before the match started so it never began. They did a rematch later on in the card and went 10-minute to a draw so Horowitz was awarded the win since the gimmick was Skip had to beat him in 10 minutes. That was the best match on the card. They did an elimination match for Coliseum video with Diesel and Michaels and Undertaker over Kama and Tatanka and Sid. Match where Sid got hurt, and Bret beat Hakushi in a cage match. Brickhouse Brown worked as a jobber for Hunter Hearst Helmsley. July 26th in St. Louis saw Fantasio, Del Spellbinder Wilkes, do a tryout match beating Radford Bigelow over Tatanka strap match, Undertaker over Kama casket match, Shawn and Bret beat Lawler and Hakushi in the best match on the show but not as good as it sounds, and Diesel beat Yokozuna in a cage, subbing for Sid. No angles at that show and TV consisted mainly of squash matches. Next European tour is October 6th through October 15th with the first night in Vienna, Austria and the final night in Zurich, Switzerland. And all Germany dates in between. No matches announced but on the tour are Diesel, Yokozuna, Owen Hart, Smith, Luger, Ramon, Sid, Bigelow, Tatanka, 1-2-3 Kid, Adam Bomb, Henry Godwin, Man Mountain Rock, who appears to be getting buried, Radford and Helmsley.